Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on Erasure's second album, Circus, and it came out in 1987. And this is Two-Ring Circus, the version I know better, the version I got when it came out in 1987 when I was 11 years old. This is the version I most know. My older sister had Circus, the regular version, and so I mean, we both played this album so much when it came out. We were big Erasure fans when the first couple albums came out all the way through. And this is their third time on the channel. I thought I rated Chorus 63 out of 100, so I think that's a good album. Wild, I felt like it was a very underwhelming, below par album for them. I gave it a 43. Wild's definitely by far the lowest I'll ever score a Erasure album, I think. Unless I get around to reviewing their Christmas album and it's as bad as I might think, or as campy, or it could be some good ones on there, but I don't know if I want Andy Bell singing Christmas songs. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm sure they're catchy though, but I think it's a little strange, that I don't know. I just think of like disco and Christmas music don't really go together that well, or dance music in general, and whatever style you think Erasure sort of fits in. I don't know if it really goes too well with Christmas music, but maybe I'll review that sometime. But yeah, getting back to Two-Ring Circus or Circus. Let me see, where should I start here? In some ways, the Two-Ring Circus is really just extended versions of the original song. It has most of the same track list, except it doesn't have Circus on it. So I just included that on the end here. Kind of getting into the songs, or actually, there's a lot of catchy songs on here. I feel like, I really like Sometimes, obviously. The singles are catchy. Sometimes it doesn't have to be like that, or it doesn't have to be Circus and Victim of Love are all really strong singles. It seems like every Erasure album has 3 or 4 singles, and if you compare like each album's singles to each other, these ones are probably some of the strongest ones. I think of Sometimes is well regarded as one of the Erasure's best. I really like Circus, is really good as well. It doesn't have to be as really solid. Victim of Love is probably the weakest of the 4, but still a above average single in my opinion. But about average for the band, I would say. But I think one of the key things about this album is the secondary albums that kind of complete the album. In some ways, are equally as strong, and in some ways, better, and just show a different side. I think of like the fairy tale and darker chorus on Hideaway is really good. Leave Me to Bleed is really haunting. Of course, Don't Dance is really catchy and of course Dancy. And then you got the ballads Sprawling and If I Could are really strong, are really good ballads as well. So it seems like it's probably one of the most complete Erasure albums for me. Of course, Vince Clarke is just awesome. His ability to produce catchy dance songs is just, I can't, every time I talk about Erasure or Yazoo or The Assembly or anything Vince Clarke is involved in, I just think of, he's such a creative and catchy producer when it comes to writing electronic pop songs. He must like wake up and just like think of one real quick, and I just can't even imagine. And I'm actually even looking forward to hearing some of the newer Erasure albums. Some of them have gotten good reviews, especially in the last like 10 years. The last 3 or 4 have gotten good reviews, so I'm looking forward to hearing them. But I haven't heard any albums after 97. After Cowboy, which I have out there. But Andy Bell's voice too is so perfect for this sound. In some ways, he's related more to disco than people might think. Like, I almost think if you took, if Andy Bell was singing over disco, he'd be probably like a high energy disco like Sylvester, or maybe not that high pitched, but you know what I mean. He'd probably be on the higher side of like high energy disco for a genre. But since it's Vince Clarke writing the music, I guess they're more new wave or synth pop. Probably more synth pop than new wave for sure. But there's a lot of disco sounds in a lot of Erasure, songs and at the time I never really thought of that much. I was like, oh, it's just synth pop or new wave, but there's a lot of disco in his tracks, and maybe it even comes from this album, especially because "Gimme Gimme Gimme" was an ABBA cover, and of course they did the ABBA covers after that, which really ties them to disco as well. But it seems like almost every album has like a few disco tracks. I do got to give this album a lot of credit too, because the remixers on here did an excellent job. They kind of were put on the map here for me as far as like Flood. This is first time when I was 11 years old, first time I really, even though his name was on other albums I knew, like it really hit home when he was a remixer, when he remixed Sometimes on this track, because I like the 7-inch version a lot, the pop version, but I feel like the version on Two Ring Circus is like the quintessential 7-inch version for it. It's a little bit longer. It's 454 to be exact. It's funny, I just know that off the top of my head, but because I remember playing this track so much, this particular version, more so than the singles or even the remixes, because I thought it was the best blending of the pop of the single version and like an extended version. And it's, if you know the remix on Two Ring Circus, the way it highlights the main keyboard riff, the hook of the song on this album, on this version is ideal. And it also put little Louis Vega on my map, who's a great remixer and great DJ and Latin house producer who's been around for 40 years, just legendary DJ. And here was the first time I heard his name, so of course it's got Daniel Miller on here as well, and Eric Radcliffe as well, who also, of course was from the Assembly. But, little Louis Vega's mix of Hideaway on here is excellent. But again, the remixes don't sway my opinion of what the songs are. Of what I rate the original songs, because I know the album so well. It's even if they're remixes, I feel like I know where they were, or I know roughly where they were going to be, probably even before I even replayed this album this week when I scored it. So what else? First song, Sometimes, was the lead single off the album. This is the 12-inch version, UK version. But like me, you had to get the other remixes, so you bought the German one. This one had this is the promo copy Sometimes, but this has the Shiver mix, which was really strong, and also an extended remix. Also, it doesn't have to be on here. The Oopa Doopa mix, I think it was called, right? The Boopa Doopa mix or something like that, or it's hard to read it with the colors on it. But that was a legendary remix. Not legendary to me. I mean, to me it was legendary, but it may not be legendary to other people. But I thought that version is even better, I think, than the original track, in my opinion. But yeah, you had to get. Sometimes especially with mute artists, like when it comes to 12-inch records, you have to get multiple copies to get all the good remixes, and here's a perfect example. Sometimes, but obviously it's a legendary track for the band. I was on the edge about it, 3 3/4 stars and 4 stars. I give it 3 3/4 stars. It could really easily be 4 stars though. I don't think it makes much difference in the overall album. I'll probably, I'll push it up to 4 stars. I feel like it warrants an excellent rating. Now that I look at it, it is kind of a classic of their genre. I mean, of their style of music and of the band. So, it's my favorite song on the album. right away, first song. I don't think too many other people would say. I certainly have some more underdog tracks on here that I'll probably go to if I pick up this album and like, oh, I want to hear this because you've heard sometimes so many times. But I think if anybody was to say what's their favorite song or what the best song on here is, I think most people would say Sometimes. It doesn't have to be 3 stars. I think that's a very good track as well. I'd probably give the remix probably 3.5 stars for a remix though. Victim of Love, 2.5 stars. I don't like it maybe as much as other people. I think it's the weakest single on here, but still a very worthy song and still a good song. It's a very consistent album. Again, Leave Me to Bleed, 3.25 stars. That's my tied for my second favorite track on here. Hideaway, I got 3 stars. Don't Dance, I got 3 stars. If I Could and Sprawling, I both give 2.5 stars. I think they're above average for the ballads of Erasure when I think of the albums. Yeah, I think they're above average. 2.5 stars. I don't think there's. Well, I won't say. I won't think there's any 4-star ballads on here. I take that back because Ship of Fools is probably close, and Am I Right? I feel like actually In My Arms is really good too. Maybe even Rock Me Gently. So there's a good amount of sort of ballad songs Erasure that'd be close to 4 stars. So these ones are probably around a little bit above average or average, but I feel like they're above average. I'm probably a little harsh on Erasure songs in general as far as like critiquing them and giving them a score. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because I brought up Wild, and Wild I got the most comments or emails directed, saying that Wild was better than I rated it. So, I'm probably a little harsh on the catchiness of Erasure, but I also appreciate I think a more well-rounded Erasure than maybe most people would. And then lastly, the track Circus. That's tied for my second favorite with Leave Me to Bleed. I give it 3.25 stars, and I like it too because it's a little deeper. It's got a little edge to it, which is cool. As far as the opportunities on the album, there's really none that stick out. It's a consistent album. All of the tracks are over 2.5 stars. Highest one is 4 stars, so very consistent, high ranking album for the most part. It doesn't feel as a cohesive album as Chorus or I Say, or even their self-titled 1995 album, Erasure, which I think is probably the most cohesive album because it flows really well. So I don't think this is the most cohesive album, but I would say as far as the songs, I think they're the most level of consistent, higher level of consistency on this album, in my opinion. When I take the stars, I add them up, and it's 26.75 stars divided by 9 songs. Those are 2.97. So I have it right around 70. I give it a couple extra stars as well. 72 out of 100. So this is right on the low side of a very good album. Yeah, I mean it's one of my favorite Erasure albums. It's the first one I ever had. I don't feel like I'm being biased towards it too because it's my first Erasure album I bought. It felt like all the Erasure albums, the first 9 or so, were very special whenever they came out, and I always look forward to Erasure albums, and I really played a lot of the Erasure albums a lot, and so I don't feel like I'm being biased towards this album. I just think it has the most consistent, well balanced songs. I don't feel like any of these songs are below good, and I got them all below 2.5 stars, which is on its way to very good. I can't see any flaws with any of these songs, to be honest with you. Not at all. So as far as the consistency there, I don't think they all necessarily go together that well when I think of it like from maybe a more avant-garde perspective, but they are kind of like disco in a way. They're kind of are what they are in the end, and they start a new one, but they're also catchy. I mean, they're all really catchy songs, and I really can't fault anything in the album, really at all. Um, it could be a little bit more dynamic, but it's 1987 for an album, so it's a raw sounding dance album for sure. And I think in some ways, I respect it a lot because it's the first two Erasure albums are very raw sounding. In fact, I think almost like Yazoo has more depth in the recordings than the first two Erasure albums. Just they're very. I guess it's because they're very beat machine heavy and keyboard heavy, and maybe not so. I think of like the Moogs and Yazoo and stuff like that, and maybe a little bit more studio processing and studio uh, mixer sounding, the mix board, and just standard effects from mix boards, maybe a few outer effects. But I feel like this is very, very raw drum machines and keyboards for the time, and I don't think that's a bad thing or a good thing, but I do think of the rawness of the album, the songs, and how fairly primitive they are. Like I feel like for them to be as timeless as they are and catchy, like I feel like that it sort of overcame what somebody might feel is fairly dry, basic kind of dance music. It's just my thoughts. But yeah, 72 out of 100. What's your thoughts on Circus as an album, and touring Circus? What are your thoughts on this album? What would you rate this album? All right, thanks for watching.